So I'm just going to go through our agenda for our meeting. First, I'm going to do just a couple introductions. Then we're going to go through just some ground rules for our meeting and some tips for Zoom. And then we'll jump into our presentation, and we will have a question and answer session at the end. My name is Erin Matthews. I am the Tongass Revision Plan Coordinator. And we also have Erin Lynn Nesser. She is the senior planner with another group in the Forest Service called the Pacific Planning Service Group, and they're supporting us on this very big endeavor for this revision. So we will both be facilitating and working through the question and answer session as well. So just some meeting ground rules. This meeting is going to be recorded and will be posted to the following website. It's kind of lengthy. So there is a QR code if you want to scan that, and you will see this QR code again. The website is our #1 stop shop for everything. Closed captioning will be available on the recorded version of this presentation. The microphones for participants will remain off for the duration of the meeting unless the moderator unmutes you during the question and answer session. And questions will be addressed during the question and answer session at the end of the PowerPoint presentation. So I think we all know a lot about Zoom, but I don't think it doesn't hurt to just review some of those buttons. As we move into the question and answer, we will be able to use that Q&A to submit questions to the revision team about this project at any time through the meeting. The chat will be used for relevant website links, and I think Erin Lynn's going to help us out and drop the website link into that chat as well. And then if you experience any technical issues, please feel free to reach out through the chat as well. The raised hand will be used during the question and answer session to ask a question. And at least on my version, it's not the arrow next to reactions, but just hitting that reactions button will give you that raised hand icon and option. So with that, I'm going to jump into our first webinar that is on the upcoming Tongass Forest Plan revision and how to be involved in this process. I'll start with the simple but important question. What is the current Tongass Land Management Plan? The Tongass National Forest Plan was originally developed over 25 years ago in 1997. It has been amended since then, most notably here in 2016 is the version that you see. So why are we revising? And like I said, it was developed over 25 years ago. So since then, it's likely that scientific information and methodology have evolved. And this does include the acknowledgement of including indigenous science or traditional ecological knowledge. There's been many social and resource changes, and there's a need for social and cultural integration. Conditions have changed, use and demands have potentially changed, and there's potentially new threats to our resources. And a few of these changes have been addressed in amendments, while many have not been formally recognized and incorporated. And the Forest Service also does have new planning regulations. And if you hear the term 2012 planning rules thrown around, that's what we're referring to. And they do require that we update these plans at least every 15 years because they need to serve that vital role of leading our management. And they need to be pulling together that public participation to put this plan together. So a land management plan is a little different than some of the conversations we typically have on the Tongass. We're not talking about those project-specific activities, but instead, this is going to provide the overall management direction and guidance for the whole Tongass. It provides the sideboards that guide all of our future projects or activities on the ground. It's a comprehensive framework, and like I said, can be for the next 15 years. It doesn't compel or direct any action. It's not prescriptive. It's much like a zoning ordinance, saying what can happen in certain parts of the forest. It doesn't authorize any use projects or those project-specific activities. It directs the Forest Service, not the public, and it doesn't repeat any existing regulations and policy. It will also reflect the distinct roles and contributions of the Tongass, how it contributes to the surrounding area and how the surrounding area contributes to the Tongass. It will provide guidance and constraints on management to meet our desired conditions. And most importantly, shaped by public engagement, as these are and remain public lands. So I've definitely heard some questions and doing some initial outreach, worrying that this is going to happen quick, and everyone wants to make sure that they get their input in. So not to worry, this is not a short process. We actually haven't even officially started yet. We're just in that pre-assessment phase, and we're reaching out to our partners and agencies and tribes, the Alaska Native corporations, seeing how they want to be engaged during this process. And the next month or so, we will move into the assessment phase. And during the assessment, we're looking at those existing conditions, gathering traditional ecological knowledge from the local tribes. All of this will be pulled into the assessment, and we'll talk a little bit more about that phase coming up. We'll then move to the plan development next year in 2025. And again, this is going to pull in that information from the assessment. And most notably, we'll be pulling in input from the public to revise the existing forest plan. Then we'll move into the National Environmental Policy Act processes, which many of us are familiar with. And then finally, finalizing the plan, final environmental impact statement with the normal objection periods, getting us to that record of decision. So not a short process, around 4-ish years is our goal. So we will have an ample amount of time for the most important part, which is our public engagement. So talking about this first phase that we're moving into, the assessment. It's not an easy task. It's going to be evaluating all of the Tongass, evaluating existing information, meant to be a rapid assessment of this information. But as you can imagine, there's lots of different components that make up the Tongass. I tried to capture just a few of those here, everything from our watersheds to our species, recreation, areas of tribal importance, mining, cabins. So definitely not an inclusive list, but it's going to be pulling all this information together. And not just looking right down at the ground, but looking at what potential stressors are going to impact the area. What are the social, cultural, and economic conditions that are affecting the Tongass? And what are the benefits of the Tongass to the surrounding area? So I like to just get us all familiar as we do move into the plan development phase. There's some terms that you're going to see, which are shown on this slide. An analogy of a forest plan is like railings on a boardwalk. This boardwalk is taking us where we want to go, getting us to our desired condition. This is the vision. This is where we want to go. So this is going to be put down in enough detail to measure progress towards the achievement. And all management activities should be aimed at achieving this, getting us to that end of the boardwalk. So for example, in a stream situation, it could be that the desired condition is that we maintain the stream habitat to support the persistence of those plant and animal species that are known to historically occur in those areas. We'll then have objectives. This is when we want to get there, the strategy. It's concise, measurable, time specific. It's a tools for how we reach those desired conditions and are more the mileposts along the road as well. For example, using our stream example, an objective could be that per decade, we'll complete 600 miles of stream and wetland restoration projects to maintain those stream habitats that support those plant animal species found in those areas. So like any good boardwalk, we've got the railings so we don't fall off. Does allow us to move around a bit, but it's still getting us to the end. And that's our standards and guidelines. Keeps us in the direction towards those desired conditions, but it provides those sideboards, the framework. It doesn't authorize any project, but it's providing those sideboards for how we design and implement future projects and activities. Standards are the rules that we'll operate on when we develop our projects, again, moving closer to those desired conditions, and will be those constraints on projects and activities. So for example, for our stream example, a standard could be that vehicles will be parked in locations that avoid spilled fuel getting into those streams. We then have guidelines. Those are mandatory constraints and implemented in the forest plan, but unlike standards, deviations may occur as long as we're meeting the intent of the guideline. So for the stream, a guideline could be that to maintain the structure and the stability of that stream habitat, large woody debris shouldn't be cut or removed from that area unless it's going to cause harm to structures or human safety downstream. So I like to highlight that this is not a financial process, but this provides the sideboards of how we can manage within the funds that we're given. Another term or plan component that you'll see is suitability. So lands are going to be identified as suitable or not suitable for various types of multiple uses or activities based on the desired conditions for that area. The suitability required under our rules is also timber suitability, and we will talk a little bit more about that. We have wild and scenic rivers, recommended wilderness, and other areas. And we will be having follow-up webinars that I'll mention in coming slides as well. So just to highlight, and we're not going to get too much in the weeds, but some of the key concepts and those important things that are going make up our plans and are part of the planning rules. It first and foremost recognizes the role of science, that we need to be using the best available science. The assessment, like I said, we need to have that assessment of trends and current conditions. Public participation, which is why I'm glad you're all here, and hopefully more viewers when we record this. We need to have public participation involved in this entire process. And then, of course, monitoring. We need to make sure that we have the right measures to measure if we're getting down that boardwalk to our desired conditions. Then we also have some additional requirements that include ecological, social, and economic sustainability. We want to maintain the diversity of our plant and animal communities, multiple use, and as we know, on Forest Service land, there's many different uses that are possibilities. Everything from outdoor recreation, our wildlife, our fish, includes protection of cultural and historic resources, management of areas of tribal importance. And then also timber requirements are part of this. And it must include plan components, including standards and other plan content regarding timber management. And this is one of those topics that will be covered in a subsequent webinar as well. So with this planning process, we also have a few parallel processes that are moving at the same time. One part of the forest plan revision is a requirement to inventory national forest system lands and evaluate if the lands are suitable for inclusion in the National Wilderness Preservation System, and determine whether to recommend any such lands for wilderness designation. But with this, it's important to remember that only Congress can designate wilderness. Another part of the process is to review the rivers and streams for their potential inclusion in the National Wild and Scenic River System. Again, only Congress can designate these river and stream segments as wild and scenic. We also have species of conservation concern. Species of conservation concern is a species other than a federally recognized threatened or endangered candidate proposed species, if you're familiar with those terms, that is known to occur in the plan area. And those are ones that the regional forester has determined that with the best available science information that we have, there's concern about their capability to persist long-term in the plan area. And as you can see, these are all starred because these will also be topics for some of our following webinars in our series. So engagement, if you haven't heard me already, having participation in this plan is key to having a successful plan. So when we were developing our engagement strategy for this multi-year effort, we tried to pull in information that we've already heard. Information we heard from the Southeast Alaska Sustainability Strategy on how the tribes, the public, and our partners wanted the Forest Service to engage. We used that feedback as well as some initial outreach on the revision, and it helped us create key points for engagement strategy, which I've included. We want to strive for authenticity. We want to strive to first to listen and then to be heard. Aim for clear and understandable language. You know, that's always a stress or stretch for the government employees to avoid the acronyms. So, but again, we will work towards this. Working together towards potential solutions, offering hopefully a wide array of opportunities to engage, such as this webinar series, proactive, timely notifications, transparent data collection and response, and using existing partnerships and relationships. And if you want to learn more about our strategy, we do have that posted on our website. Hopefully you also hear that key message. That's our go-to spot for all of our information. And if you have feedback on that, you can email our revision team inbox. So how can you be involved? There's multiple different ways. First, these webinars, learn about just those key processes of the plan revision, and you can ask clarifying questions. We're going to have in-person community workshops. Those are being planned for the month of April. Did recently release that on our website, and we'll also send out an email reminder here in the next few days. So those will be a very important part of gathering feedback face-to-face in our communities. We also have feedback and comment periods. Informal feedback gathered through all the engagements will help the phases, the different parts of our process. We'll have online collaborative mapping tools in the future and when we need that particular information. And as we know, the United States Forest Service has a trust responsibility and duty to consult with tribes on federal actions that impact tribal interests. So if you're a representative from a tribal government or Alaska Native corporation, please contact our tribal relations officer, Jennifer Hanlon, or the district ranger to schedule a consultation. Our agencies also do have some other ways that they can be engaged, not prohibiting them from all the ways I just mentioned. They do have the ability to be a cooperating agency and just really providing that data, being part of our teams that are developing this information and bringing in their own agency plans and information to inform the Tongass plan. Also potential for participating in intergovernmental agency meetings. But again, these don't preclude any ability to comment or participate on the normal routes. So hopefully you all want to be involved, but I just want to stress that this public input is critical. We definitely have heard from the communities and gotten that information, especially from the recent SAS efforts, Southeast Sustainability Strategy. So we are pulling that information in, but there will be specific time periods that we really need the public's input. We need to know if there's existing management plans that we should be aware of that will help guide this forest plan revision. If there's observations or perceptions of current trends that we need to be aware of, or if there's changes needed to current ways the national forest is managed, or if there's protection or restoration needed in certain areas. All of this information will help inform this plan. So you're already here or you're watching, so you know about our Wednesday webinars, but I just wanted to highlight that we have several plans and potentially more down the road, so stay tuned for that. But the ones that are up here in March and April, next week, we're gonna have a little bit more on just the nuts and bolts of plan revision, the building blocks for understanding what's important in this process. And then we'll move into the wild and scenic river eligibility study process and plan revision, sustainable recreation and tourism and revision. Then we'll have one on recommended wilderness process in this revision, planning for species diversity, and then also planning for all the many resource uses on the Tongass in this revision. And you can see the QR codes here. So it's gonna be on the next few slides if you wanna grab it, but again, that website has this information. And like I mentioned, we just did go live with our community workshop schedule, located 24, 25 places around Southeast Alaska. So we're really excited about this opportunity to have this face-to-face interaction and get this input from the public. So please key into that website and see which workshop date and location works best for you so you can attend. And one last thing, we are starting up our revision office hours, time with myself and Erin Linesser as well. to just, if you have any questions, informal kind of virtual opportunity to bring those questions forward. And we will have 2 opportunities for those, one on the first Tuesday of the month, and that will start next month in April from 10 to 11. And then we'll also have one the third Tuesday of the month, and that's going to start March 19th. And that will be an evening time from 5 to 6 p.m. So if I stress nothing else, it's how important having you involved in this process is. I highlighted just a little snippet from our website. So you'll see this on the main page there, how to get involved. There is a link to click on to get to our plan revision inbox. Also a place to put your email address. So please do this, because I will email out whenever we meet or reaching those milestones or those opportunities. My email address is there. And I also have here our plan revision inbox, which is on the website as well, to reach the whole team. So that is what I have to present to you. So we are going to move into our question and answer session. And so just if you need a little refresher, there is that Q&A button, so you can type the questions into the box there, so we can respond live or written. You can do verbal questions with that raise hand feature after you hit the reactions for our moderator to unmute you. And you may provide your question then, and then we can place you back on mute. I just want to say, though, that any questions that we take today will be compiled and posted along with the webinar recording. So if there is a particular question that we're not able to address completely right now without having all the specialists here tonight, we will get that answer for you and post that on our website for future viewing. So with that, I think we can start our question and answer session. And Erin Lynn, I'll let you take it away.
All right. If you raise your hand, I will unmute you. If you'd rather type it in, you can type it, click on the Q&A button, and you can type your question into the Q&A box, and I will read it out. While we're waiting, just everyone, if you want to get all the website addresses and emails you can send questions to, or look at all the information about plan revision, those are all in the chat. So to access that, click on the chat button at the bottom of your screen, and you should be able to see all of those addresses. I don't see any hands up, but please raise your hand if you'd like to ask a question, and we'll unmute you.
It looks like I got one direct question, keeping me on my toes to see if I can move around Zoom here. So go ahead and read that question. Will the plan revision process outline future land disbursements to state, university, and mental health? I would definitely say land ownership is always a topic of concern for folks. And there will be the element of our plan revision that will identify those current land ownerships and designations. But to speak to future, it won't be projecting per se, but Erin Lynn, did you want to take the future land disbursement side of that question?
I don't know, but though the Tongass knows that those are really important topics, and they will review them during the assessment process. And I agree with you, Erin, but it will definitely be looked at and discussed. And so it's not something that they're going to leave out, but it's probably not going to end up with those land disbursements. But the kind of things the plan revision does is maybe identify, these are the types of land disbursements that will be considered by the forest, or these are high priority areas for land disbursement. I don't want to say more than that just because I would be speaking out of turn, but it does not, it is probably not going to specifically identify areas for disbursements, but that is something that will be reviewed during the plan revision and we'll definitely look at it. So when you guys want to provide input, it's something that the leadership of the forest will look at and think of how to address. It doesn't usually do that. Usually it's a separate process. We have another question, which is, would you talk about, oh, I'm sorry, Erin.
Sorry about that. I think it was follow up to the question.
Yeah, we got the follow up, but for example, the plan does not specifically identify areas for disbursements, and then we got a thanks for that. So there is another question that I got in the general chat that says, would you talk about the consultation requirements towards tribes versus native corporations? Seems they have very different objectives.
I can just lead out that conversation. We, like I mentioned, we haven't jumped into the assessment phase quite yet. So we have actually already reached out to the tribes and the Alaska Native corporations. They both received that opportunity for engagement and consultation. So that effort has been initiated, but there is going to be much more engagement with the tribes and Alaska Native corporations throughout this process, because it's ultimately very, very important to bring in that that perspective and that information.
Thank you. We have another question. That is, which is similar but a little different. Will there be opportunities to request adjustments in land use zoning? For example, roadless areas on Baranof Island are currently allocated to timber uses, but in actuality used for recreation and by salmon. Can we change those as part of the process? I think that we will come up with some questions and answers to put on the website about roadless areas. I know that's going to be a very hot topic in this plan revision. I don't think the question is, but I do want to clarify that the forest cannot designate or undesignate inventoried roadless areas. So that won't be done as part of this plan. But as far as the uses that happen within them, that's something that's going to be looked at as part of the plan, but I would be speaking out of turn if I talked about what the outcome would be, because it's something we're going to analyze and look at. Erin, do you have anything else to add? No, it's a sticky topic.
Yeah, I think you spoke to that perfectly. And as far as the uses, just like you said, it's going to be an important part of this process. We were just at the Innovation Summit talking about some of these issues and topics about the use. And you know, we have some set areas already that were designated by Congress, but we will be looking at the Tongass as a whole for what is going to work best for all these multiple uses. So it's a very important part of this process.
Okay, thanks, Paul. I saw your follow-up to that question that said, to clarify, this is not about roadless areas, but more about current Forest Service land use designations, such as modified landscape, which allows a lot of timber. And so if you're not talking about inventoried roadless areas, then absolutely this plan, the current land use designation or LUDs in the existing plan are, unless they're required from a different law or regulation, they will be reviewed. And the new plan will have either management areas or geographic areas that have specific land use, you know, like you're saying, specific land use designations, specific things that should and should not happen within that area. But they, in all likelihood, will be different than the current land use designations based on what is found in the assessment and throughout the process and what we hear from the public. So there will be a definite review of all the land use designations as part of this. That's a big part of what this forest plan will do. hopefully that answered the question. The next question is, are there any non-U.S. Forest Service led groups or organizations that are working to inform the Tongass Plan revision that are formally recognized by the U.S. Forest Service? For example, Sustainable Southeast Partnership, Tongass Transition Collaborative, etc.
So I can take that one.
Take that one. Oh, okay. I'm not exactly sure what they're asking, but do you know?
Well, I maybe I don't know that there's kind of weight on the formally recognized. We're definitely reaching out to our local groups and organizations to make sure that everyone is part of this process, to bring in that collaborative relationship and that information, making sure that they're completely informed on where we're at in this process, what information we're looking for. So we do have that. We do have a couple of formal agreements or partnerships, with one being with Spruce Root to help facilitate our engagement, to reach out to the communities, hopefully in a different way. And then also with the Juneau Economic Development Council as well, which is why we were at the Innovation Summit, to reach out to those recreation and tourism interests to really spell out what sustainable recreation looks like for the Tongass. So we do have those formal partnerships, but we are also definitely emphasizing the need to collaborate with those other groups, the ones that you mentioned specifically.
Right, I think I've gone through all of them that are currently in the Q&A. And is there anyone else who would like to raise their hand and ask a question? Or we'll still be here for you to type in the Q&A for anyone who still wants to do that.
Yeah, and while there's a bit of a lull, I'll just hit a couple more slides here for those that are remaining. We did have the webinars that I already went through, but I also wanted to highlight that if you are unable to join us in those in-person workshops, the community workshops that will be throughout the Southeast area during the month of April, our partner Spruce Root has created a feedback form, so you can still provide that input on the vision and the management and the resources on the Tongass, because again, we need that information. If you're going to be at our workshop, there'll be lots of ways to provide that information. So you don't necessarily need to dive in this quite yet, but it's always here if you do want that option in the comfort of your own phone. But this QR code does bring you to that survey form for you to provide that input. So either in person at our community workshops or you can provide your information here.
All right, and I put that URL in the chat. Called survey URL. Okay, so we have another question. Will the final decisions be made solely by the U.S. Forest Service, or are there any partner organizations that will be invited to the decision-making process? I can take that one to start with. It's one person who is able to make the decision on this forest plan, the official decision. It is signed by the forest supervisor. So that is the only person who can make the decision. That being said, the forest supervisor, as Aaron Matthews keeps saying, the most important part of this is what information comes to him from the tribes, from the public, from organizations. While no one else can be part of the actual decision-making process, he is going to be informed by all the information from everyone he hears about, plus the science, plus the information that the specialists and biologists give him. He will be informed by all of that to help make his decision. But no one else, no partner organization can help make that decision.
I want to thank everyone again for joining us today, and please share the availability of these webinars in your communities and the website to get the word out so we can make sure we bring everybody into this process, which is not quick, like I mentioned. So we've got time, but we definitely need your input. But thank you again for your time and being with us here tonight. And we look forward to seeing you for several weeks more. So we'll stay on the line if anyone has any questions, maybe with a less of a crowd. If you think of something later tonight, you're like, oh, why didn't I ask that? You can submit that through our plan revision inbox, those email addresses that you'll find in our public engagement side of our website. So please feel free to bring those any and often. I've got lots of folks keeping me honest on my typos, even on my webpage. So I really appreciate all of that. Feedback is great. So thank you.
Not seeing any others right now, but hold on. Looks like people are dropping off. So as Erin said, if anyone wants to talk with fewer people or just chat anymore, we're here. I put the plan revision inbox email in the chat, along with the website URLs and along with our personal or our work emails, if you would like to ask us any questions. Oh, okay, I see another one. I see two more questions. So the first one is, will the scoping process include agency developed alternatives, or will the Forest Service wait until after scoping to develop alternatives? So I can answer that one. For this, as long, actually with all EISs, this will be an environmental impact statement. And scoping for this, what we plan to do is put out a draft plan. It may not be fully developed with all the standards and guidelines, but right now our plan is to put out a pretty well developed draft plan for scoping. It would not be alternatives, it would just be the initial proposed action. And once we hear back from the public after scoping, that's when we'll develop alternatives based on the feedback we hear from the public. And the other question, is the current plan available at your website? Yes, it is. I need to double check to make sure that it's on the plan revision website.
It is not on the plan revision website, but it is on our main planning page for Tongass. There is information about the whole planning process and those previous plans, even back to before the one 25 years ago. So that information is available online. And maybe if you have that quick, maybe Erin,
I will do that.
Thank you.
I'll put that URL in there. Okay, I put the website for the existing plan in there. The 2016 plan and the 1997 plan, some older stuff, it's all in there. Okay, and I have another question, which I think is a direct message to me, so I don't think anyone else can see it. But it is, and she caveated that she wasn't sure how to phrase it, but I completely understand the question. It says, in overgrown communities or boroughs, is there a point where National Forest Service land is considered for private ownership? Yes, there is a process for that. It is not going to happen in this plan revision, most likely, just like the question about the disbursements to the state. This plan might set the framework for how we would do that in the future, or areas that might be important, and it's called a land exchange. And so the Forest Service pretty regularly does what's called land exchanges. The Forest Service is not allowed to sell land like the BLM is, but we are allowed to exchange land. And so in some cases, if cities are growing a lot or land is needed for some use that the Forest Service cannot support, like you cannot have private housing development on Forest Service land, there is something called a land exchange. Again, that decision won't be made in this forest plan, most likely. That would be unusual for a forest plan. But if people bring up areas where that might be something that's important or something that's needed, it's something that the forest supervisor can consider and think about how they might prioritize those areas in the future. Like I've seen forest plans that say areas within 2 miles of communities are high priorities for land exchanges. So that in the future, when land exchanges come up, we can look and see, is that compliant with our forest plan? Yes or no. So hopefully that answers the question. That might be too much. You're welcome. Thanks for asking the great questions, everyone. I know Erin already said that, but I also appreciate you guys all coming and spending your own time getting information about this and asking great questions. These are really great questions, and we're gonna have some of these commonly asked questions and frequently asked questions put on our website so that we can have answers to some of the things that maybe we didn't quite have the best answer to, or that there's some nuances there so other people can see them. Yes, anyone can email either of the errands to with some follow-up questions. So that would be great, Ryan. Not seeing any more. Okay. Well, I guess rather than sit here awkwardly, which I'm happy to stay, anyone speak up if you'd like us to stay on and answer any more questions. We're completely happy to, but if we don't want to sit here in silence, we can sign off, and I guess maybe give another minute for people to object to that proposal. And then if nobody objects, we'll sign off and we'll see you either next time, or you can use any of these ways to engage with us and let us know what questions you have. Now let's just give it one more minute. Does that work?
Sounds good.
Okay.
All right, hearing none, I think that does it for this webinar. So thanks again, everyone. We'll see you again in some format somewhere. Thank you.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.